Hey everybody, welcome back to D&J's Epic Quest. It has been a hot minute. We've had a little bit of an extended break here. I don't know how long it's been since we've recorded some Malazan stuff together, but it's been a little bit.
It was Damien, right? That was our last episode? No.
We did one after Damien.
Yeah, it was the drunk episode.
which you guys still haven't heard yet.
Nope.
I'm looking forward to listening to that when you get to it.
Yeah, it's going to be another long one. I think the drunk part is like an hour or like 3 hours long, and then the first part, the first sober edition was like almost 2 hours long, and then the last part was like 30 minutes. So it's gonna be another long one.
Man, that's gotta be close to a month ago.
Yeah, about that. Yeah, I can find out.
I'm curious. Yeah, it's got to be a little while, but it's good to be back. It feels good because I've missed doing this. It's been hectic for me, trying to make time. Kids got jobs and stuff, and at least with me personally, nothing super crazy. My sister's baby's pretty sick, but that's going better now. And you've had robotics and stuff. Man, since the last time we've recorded, we got our broken binding Malazan books. That was pretty freaking cool. I think they look great.
They do look great. It looks like that recording, which was done the same day that we did the last part, was on the 4th of March.
Okay, so it's been 2.5 weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
Feels like a long time.
It does feel like a long time.
Yeah, how you been, man?
I've been okay. Robotics is almost over. This week is the robotics competition. We'll see how that goes.
You look not excited.
No.
Justin is not excited.
Not excited.
Well, anyways, we've got some patrons to read off. We haven't done that in a while. You want to take that away, Justin?
Yeah. We've got Jan the Picker, Luciana Etrigan, Ryan the Topological, Damien Facing the Rock, Nate Fiddle Me This, Shield Anvil Dylan, Calvin He Who Witnessed, Livia the Malazan Potato, Aren Mati Regular, Scott the Only, Graceless Passion, Dead Smell, Gestriant, My Own Genesis, and joining our little chain of dogs here, we have 2 more. We've got Alex the High Mage, and we've got Tyler the Great Raven. Welcome, everyone, those that are newish, and welcome back to the rest of you. Sorry for the hiatus, y'all.
Yeah, I hope Livia doesn't mind us sharing, but she did have her baby. So congrats to her and family. And I know she made or commented on a picture of our Malazan books and said that she was able to push her baby out faster than they were able to make those broken binding editions.
That's not nice.
That was kind of funny.
Yeah.
And then, Alex, I know Alex likes the Forge of the High Mage, so if you got a different idea for a nickname, let us know, Alex. Tyler did pick the Great Raven. That was Tyler's nickname, so I did not come up with that one. But I did come up with the High Mage. That can be changed if you would like. Just let us know.
Nice.
And welcome, guys. Thanks again for joining our ever-growing chain of dogs. We won't break our fists on your faces, so you got that going for you.
This is true.
You look like you are pondering something there or checking something out. I don't know what you got going on.
I don't actually know. I'm distracted and I need to stop. Okay, I'm turning this off.
Justin, I've got one really important question here.
Oh no.
Do we have enough storage?
Yes. Yes. I made sure to clean that up a couple of days ago.
Guys, also, if you're watching this, I am not wearing my hat, and I feel so freaking weird without it right now. It's unbelievable. Um, it's really thrown me off. But anyways, I'm just going to deal with it. I could go grab it, but I'm not.
Yeah, leave it off.
Epigraph, we're going to skip again because we've got an insert from Jim again.
House of Chains, Chapter 11, Epigraph. This was a path she did not welcome. The Shaikh Rebellion, Tirsa Baal.
Section 1 here, Chapter 11 of House of Chains. Gamut, the adjunct, and Tene Baralta had ridden outside just before dawn. Outside the west gates, the army was stirring. The march north to Raraku would begin this day. The three sat studying the hill where Coltane had died. This hill had become known as the Fall. Countless humps on the summit and slopes indicated where bodies had been buried. Ants had colonized the entire hill, going about their daily tasks. Gamut suspected that this was the rumors that had drawn Tavor out here. Based on what he was seeing, he was regretting his decision to join her. It seemed the adjunct shared his disgust with the scene before them. Red-stained braids woven into chains had been draped across the summit and coiled around the twin stumps of the crosses that once stood there. Dog skulls adorned with unreadable hieroglyphics looked out from the crest of the hill. Crow feathers hung from broken arrow shafts that had been placed upright. Banners were pinned down, paintings of broken Wiccan long knives patterned all over. Icons, fetishes, a mass of debris to mark the death of a single man. Finally, after a long moment of silence, Tavor asked Tene Baralta who had done this. She asked if it was the Malazans from Aren or Red Blades. Tene stated that the hill and its flavor of icons, fetishes, were from tribes of the desert. He lists off a few and ends with the Semk. Gamut was in disbelief and stated that the Semk were from the other side of the Vathar River, and claimed that Tene must be wrong about that. The huge warrior shrugged and stated that the pilgrims come at night, and that they were hiding out there, waiting for darkness. Adjunct asked the Red Blade commander why these tribes fought against Coltane and then now worshipped him. Tene said that he could not explain this, but from what he could tell, these icons were mild compared to the icons and fetishes lining the Aren way. There was silence from the adjunct once more. Gamut imagines that what he is thinking is what Tavor was thinking. He thought that this was the path they, or she, now walked. When she had told Tamul that it wasn't Coltane's war anymore, deep down she realized that this was far from the truth. She will be doomed to walk in Coltane's shadow. She dismissed both of them and said she'd meet them on the Aren way. Gamut hesitated and told the adjunct that the Crow clan did not see Tamul as their leader. Tavor told the Fist that she would deal with it and told him to be gone. Gamut and Tene exchanged glances before swinging the horses around to travel along the track leading west. Gamut realized that this was a stretch of land that Duiker had led the refugees into Aren. Gamut wondered what was going through Duiker's mind, knowing he was leaving behind Coltane to be slaughtered. Duiker had delivered the refugees only to be staked to a tree. Gamut realized that it was beyond his comprehension, that betrayal. His body was never recovered, never put to rest. Tene spoke beside him, saying that there was so much to answer to, so much that leaves them silent, and that silence was deafening. Gamut was so uncomfortable with Tene's admission that he didn't respond. The Red Blade went on to ask Gamut if Tabor was capable of taking on the task. He responded that she was, but inside his mind he doubted himself. Tene said that he'd like to know what Tavor has done to earn Gamut's undying loyalty. Inside his head, he said that she has done nothing, but he begs the Red Blade to just let the old man have faith. Interesting. I guess the first thing that really pulled me into this section and into the chapter itself is just the scenery as to which you get all of these icons, the red stained braids, the dog skulls with like carved hieroglyphics in it. Like that was just like amazing to visualize. But I can also imagine how much of a like in awe everybody is at this.
Yeah. I think carving the skull or the hieroglyphs into the dog skulls is pretty messed up. One thing I caught, and it doesn't look like you drew attention to it, and maybe you realized this and just didn't make note of it or anything, but where it talks about like ants colonizing the hill of the bodies, like these aren't actually ants, right? Like it's people just doing their shit, running around, whatever, is what I thought. They're just looking at these from a distance. They're far away.
Interesting. I thought
Or
they
did
were
you think
closer.
it was ants?
Yeah, I thought that they were way closer.
No, I didn't. I guess I thought he was equating. There's so many people running around doing this, doing that, whatever, that it looks like different colonies of ants. I didn't think they were actually ants.
Interesting. Okay. I don't know. Yeah, I guess you might be right. If I go back to the book, they might be at a distance.
That's how I interpret it, anyways.
Yeah, the hill just south where Coltane had died had come to be known as the Fall. I mean, but it says the ground swarmed with them, their red and black bodies coated in dust, but glittering nonetheless as they went about their daily tasks. So I think he is specifically calling out ants.
I don't think so still, but we can disagree. It's all good.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Whatever. So also, I know this is maybe very, very strange, and not because of like actually Christmas time, but where Christmas derives from, which is, a pagan rituals. All of this, the debris to mark the death of a single man, reminds me of an elaborate Christmas tree, but just without the tree. You know what I mean? Like instead of a tree, it's a hill that has just been elaborately
decorated.
Thank you. And then just thinking about all of the different things, like we found out in Deadhouse Gates that they would chop off the hair to make braids. And so that's what I'm guessing this is that the red stained braids that have been woven into chains are the dead. They're the hair of the dead. So
didn't they do something with hair in Deadhouse Gates, like crossing one of the rivers? I don't remember what that was hair from, but
yeah, I think to go out into the river, they made
to make like a walkway or something. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but definitely could be right then. I mean, like it's not like it would be the first time we've seen something happen with hair.
Yeah, but it's just funny how the consistency between the two books, and there's a whole book between these two books.
Yeah,
so
right.
So I had a feeling back in chapter 9 when Kalam saw the siege soldiers praying and iconizing, I don't know how to say that, Coltane. I had a feeling that that was just the beginning. When I read this chapter, I was just like, oh, my gut instinct kind of told me that there would be more of this. But it just kind of brings me to, we find out in a later section that what had happened in the epilogue of Deadhouse Gates seems to hold some validity as to who it is. We talk about that when we get there. But I almost kind of wonder, making Coltane an icon, and it seems to be both sides are doing it, not quite as elaborately as the apocalypse. What is that going to do about his reincarnation?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I wonder if we'll ever get him back or get to see him, down the road here or not. Is he going to remember anything if we did? Or is he going to be, kind of a brand new person or something?
Well, we know that, the souls of the Wiccan elders get put into Wiccan children's bodies, right? That's why they appear so young. I don't know. I just get this weird feeling that it's not Coltane, but it's Sormo Enoth.
It might be a little change.
Yeah, I don't know why I think that. It just, I don't know. I feel like it would take away from Coltane's death if he came back.
Yeah, because it was, so
impactful.
That's a great word for it. It was. And I think you're right. It would kind of make it feel cheap if he escaped like that.
Yeah,
But I guess we'll see what happens. I mean, maybe it could work too somehow. I don't know.
maybe. But then also, they talk about the fetishes lining the Aren Way, which is where I don't know what visual you got in your mind, but the end of Dead House Gates, there were trees all along both sides of the Aren Way where soldiers were hung. And so basically, every spot where a soldier was hung, there are icons and fetishes.
Like a remembrance type thing.
Yeah. So, like, on top of this, like, Christmas tree decorated hill, this Christmas hill, so to speak, you've got this long stretch of roadway where on both sides is the same type of imagery.
Almost like Christmas lights or something is kind of what you're thinking.
Yeah, like, you know, that thing that they do in Mankato where you drive around like Sibley.
Oh, the holiday lights.
Yeah, essentially just like that, but with darker material.
Where dead bodies used to be.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Merry Christmas.
There was also this part where, you know, Gamut is thinking and he realizes that deep down, like what Tvor is thinking, and that is, well, you know, Tamol was told that it wasn't Coltane's war anymore, but deep down, they both realize, or at least Gamut is speculating that she realizes that this isn't the case. And he says she will be doomed to walk in Coltane's shadow. And this just brought me back to the end of chapter 9, where they release the Hounds of Darkness, and they are explaining Onrak, thank you, Onrak and Troll. Yeah, so Onrak and Troll. God, it's been a minute.
It
Onrak
is.
and Troll, they were talking about how, or the Hounds of Shadow are a reflection of the Hounds of Darkness. And so this just reminded me of that because it almost kind of makes it seem like they're saying that Tavor is the shadow of Coltane.
Interesting.
Not that there's probably anything to do with that. It just reminded me of that.
Gotcha.
Last thoughts is just kind of when Tanae is like, hey, like, are you sure Tavor is up to the task? Gamut doesn't even respond, and he's just like, inside of his head, he's like, you know what? Honestly, she hasn't done anything to deserve my loyalty. I just let me have faith. You know what I mean? So, but I'm sure 10A picked up on that, being that he didn't respond. I would take that as like okay, you really don't have anything.
Yeah, I feel like if you had a reason, you would speak up.
Yep. This is interesting. I mean, it kind of just seems like nobody has any confidence, which is to be fair.
Yeah. And there's something a little later on where we can maybe go a little deeper on that, but it still just makes sense to me that she's going to get her ass kicked.
That was actually I didn't read that part. But yeah. I feel like there's a lot of foreshadowing to them getting their ass kicked.
Maybe it doesn't happen, but I don't know. Right now my gut just tells me that's what's going to happen though.
And I think we'll talk about this at the end of the episode. So I think I kind of understand why the sub book is labeled the way it is.
Yeah, it was kind of cool to get like the name dropped for it, right at the end there.
Yeah.
Because I was kind of, as we were reading it, I was kind of wondering like, well, what does that mean? And we got an answer to it, which was kind of cool. We didn't really have to wait that long for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we ready to move on?
Up to it.
Cool, man. Gessler said faith was for fools. Strings cleared the dust from his throat and spat on the ground. The pace before them felt ridiculously slow as 3 squads trailed behind a wagon loaded with supplies. Strings asked the sergeant what his point was. A soldier knows one truth, and that is without faith, you are already as good as dead. Faith in the soldier next to you, and more importantly, faith that you cannot be killed no matter how delusional the truth is. Those 2 truths are the legs holding up every army. Gessler motioned to the line of trees lining Aren Way and to tell him what he sees under the mess, and to ask the ghost of the soldier on that tree about his faith. Strings said a faith betrayed does not destroy the notion of faith. In fact, it does the opposite. Gessler said maybe for him, Strings or Fiddler, but there are some things that words cannot take you around. It comes down to who is in the vanguard somewhere up ahead, and it's Tavor, who just lost an argument with a group of hoary Wiccans. Strings had been lucky. He had Whiskey Jack and Dujek. Did he know who his last commander was before he was sentenced to the Coastal Guard? It was Corbolo Dom, who must have had a fucking shrine to Whiskey Jack. However, Corbolo saw Whiskey Jack differently. He saw unfilled potential. Strings didn't know what Gessler was talking about. Gessler explained that Corbolo thought Whiskey Jack could have taken the throne if he had been, quote, hard enough. Corbolo thought that Whiskey Jack had betrayed everyone, and he could not be forgiven for that. Strings said that was too damn bad, and that it was likely the Empress was going to ship over the entire Genebacan army in time for the final battle, so he can make his grievances to Whiskey Jack then. Gessler said that was a nice thought, but he was only trying to make a point. Strings had commanders he could put faith in. Most of the rest of them had never had that luxury. They didn't know what that was like. As they walked through Aren Way, where soldiers had been spiked to trees by Corbolo Dom, most walked in silence. There had been talk of cutting the trees that once held soldiers down, but the adjunct forbade it. He wondered if she regretted that decision now. Strings looked ahead to one of the 14th's new standards, which she could hardly see through all the dust. It reflected the turning of the omen, a small figure holding a bone. It looked like a defiant figure standing in the sandstorm. This standard could have easily worked for Shaik as well. He thought it was odd, as if Shaik and Tavor, their armies, were somehow a mirrored image of each other. There were other oddities as well. Notes on a song he could barely hear made their way into his mind from time to time. It gave him goosebumps as the song was unfamiliar. He thought again on the mirrored images aspect, thinking not of Shaik and Tavor, but of Tavor and Coltane. They are walking the bloody path in reverse that Coltane took. And it was that ride that proved to all the others of Coltane's abilities. Would the same happen in their journey? How would they see Tavor when they faced the army of the Whirlwind? And what of his own return to Rariku, where he was destroyed and had risen again? It seems Rariku had stolen some of their mortality of all the bridge burners and replaced it with something else. He looked back, checking on his squad. None were lagging behind yet, which was good, but he doubted that any of the soldiers were in shape required for the journey ahead. The early days would be more difficult, before marching in full armor and weapons had become second nature. And it wouldn't be a comfortable second nature either, as it was hot here. Dehydration would be another enemy. He didn't have a way to measure his squad's worth yet, but Korik looked like the tough guy the squad needed. Tar didn't look like a quitter either. Something about the girl's smiles reminded him of Sari. It was her eyes that looked like they belonged to a murderer. He wondered about her past. Bottle had all the bravado of a young mage who probably only knew a few spells. And Cuddle? He had no worries about Cuddle. Having him here felt like coming home. The test they would all face would be brutal, but it would temper those who survived. As they were emerging from Aren Way, Gessler said that's where they found him. Strings asked who he meant. He said Duiker, but they didn't make it known since Truth was still hopeful they would find him alive. But the next time they made it out, his body was gone. His body stolen. He had been to the markets in Aren, correct? Seen the hawkers with bits of flesh or other bits they claimed belonged to Coltane, Bolt, or Duiker. Strings thought for a moment, as he said he had only seen Duiker once, and that was from a distance. He was just a soldier the Emperor thought was worth schooling. Gessler said a soldier indeed. He stood on the front lines with the others, a crusty old bastard with a short sword and shield, but something about him had caught Coltane's eye as Duiker was chosen to lead the refugees. Gessler figured it was that he was the imperial historian. Coltane wanted the story told right. String said it turned out that Coltane told his own story. He didn't need a historian after all. Gessler shrugged and said whatever. They weren't in his company long, just long enough to get some wounded on board. He talked with Duiker and Captain Lull a bit, and Coltane broke his hand punching him, or Gessler, in the face. Strings laughed and said he probably deserved it. Stormy broke in saying Gessler's nose was broken. Gessler said it had been broken enough, and it was hardly a punch. Stormy called it bullshit, saying it rivaled a punch from Urko. Gessler said it wasn't even close to what Urko could really do, which was punch over a house in a couple punches. Strings asked if this was important to him, and he said yes. It was the only way to earn his respect. Strings asked if he was going to test the adjunct soon. Gessler said maybe, but he would be lenient since she was highborn and all. They were back within sight of the Outriders, which was a relief to Strings since raiding could happen at any moment now. If rumors were to be believed, most of the tribes had forgotten about the truces they had won with the Malazan Empire. The old ways slept just beneath the surface with such people. Horn sounded, and Strings thought it was about time for a break anyways. Water crews made for water barrels in the dusty environment. Strings looked back at his squad, who were already sprawled on the ground, soaked in sweat. Balgrid, the mage, wasn't looking so good. He was pale and shivering. Korik said it was a Seti summer. Smile snapped back, saying this land was full of dead things for a reason. Korik said yes, only the strongest survive, and there are plenty of tribes about. String said he had now become the scout. Korik said if he insisted. Strings told him unless it was night, then it was Smiles who would scout. And also Bottle, if his warren was suitable. Smiles asked what Cuddle's job would be in all of this, laying on the beach like a porpoise. Cuddle was currently asleep on the ground. Strings thought she must have grew up near the sea and told her that Cuddle's job was keeping the rest of them alive when he, Strings, isn't close by. Smiles asked why he wasn't corporal then. Strings said because he is a sapper, and you don't want one of those as a corporal. He kept it to himself that he was also a sapper. Water arrived, and Strings told them not to drink too fast. Gessler joined and said the sick mage's warren was Mianus, as was his own mage, Tavos Pond, and Bottle, who interrupted saying he didn't know yet. Well, he was also Mianus. String said they could get them all working together on some rituals or illusions. Renal showed up, happy to find all his sergeants together in one place. Gessler said it was damn good of him to come eat dust with the grunts. Renal sneered, saying he has heard of him, and that if it was up to him, he would be lugging the water skins around. Gessler said if that was the case, they would all go thirsty. Renal continued, saying Keneb needed to know if there were any mages in the squads and what their abilities were. They needed to take count. Gessler said none, but was cut off by Strings, who was honest, saying 3. They would be good for covert operations. Renal said to keep the opinions to himself and left. Gessler said they could lose the mages. Strings said not to count on it. Renal didn't know the first thing about being a lieutenant in the field. They hoped Keneb would explain a few things to Renal. Borduk said that was assuming Keneb was any better than Renal. Rumor has it he was the only one to survive out of his unit, and they all knew what that probably meant. String said it was a little early to start sharpening the knives. Gessler said, cat in the wall? Now you're speaking my language. It's only funny if you've watched It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Actually, he said he understood what Fiddler was saying, and he would be patient. They needed to get the mages together and see if they would all get along. If so, they might be able to get a couple steps ahead. The horn sounded again, and the march resumed. I think that was the longest section in the chapter.
I think so, yeah.
Let's see how much of this I remember from what I jotted down at the time, but I had a few thoughts here.
Yeah.
I feel, I guess this isn't one of my thoughts, but just as I was reading it back, it made me think on it. So, they're talking about faith, right? A soldier knows one truth, and that is without faith, you're already as good as dead. Faith in the soldier next to you, and more importantly, faith that you cannot be killed, no matter how delusional that may be. And that makes me think about before when I had talked about, from what I've seen in some war movies and stuff, about, like once a soldier admits to himself they're already dead, they fight better because they don't have that fear. I feel like this is kind of similar. It's just maybe the other side of that coin.
Yeah. Well, and I think what it's trying to say is if they hadn't taken the steps that they had taken to quelch the omen, right, there would be a lot more chaos with the soldiers feeling a variety of ways, right? Like that was a way to unify the soldiers.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I also thought it was really interesting how it was just a nice transition from the end of the first section to the start of the second section. At the end of the first section, it's just like, let this old man have faith, right? And then the very beginning of the second section, we get Gessler kind of, spitting and scoffing at faith. You know what I mean? So, on top of it just kind of being a direct transition where we're with a completely different set of characters now, but also just the polar opposite of like the end of section 1, it's very pro-faith. At the beginning of section 2, it's very anti-faith,
Yeah, just at the beginning though.
Yeah.
And then Strings Fiddler, he's kind of trying to squash that too, I think. You're like, no, like we need this. It is important.
Right.
And just feeding off your point there, this quote where String says a faith betrayed does not destroy the notion of faith. I like that quote quite a bit.
It does. It hits hard. Yeah. And I feel like it embodies the bridge burners.
They get betrayed a few times.
Yep.
Well, I guess we found out Gardens of Moon, that was just kind of an accident anyways, so it still sucks.
Right. An accident.
Sure, Justin. Corbolo thought that Whiskey Jack had betrayed everyone, and he could not be forgiven for that. And I guess I'm not sure I understand that. He betrayed everyone by not taking the throne. I guess maybe we don't know enough about the scene to know much more on that. I don't know if you have any thoughts.
Yes, I do. What do Corbolo, Dom, and Lucine have in common?
They're both napping.
Right. And what is Lucine as far as napping?
Well, she's like half-blooded, right?
She's like of the royal heir, right? Well, do you remember in chapter 5 when Admiral Nock is telling a story about Lucine taking over?
A little bit.
Yeah. It has something to do with like the Nappins and the wanted. I don't remember now. Fuck. It had something to do with the Nappins wanted.
But isn't she's not full blood Nappin, isn't she? Or is it somebody else I'm thinking of that's
I don't remember now. I don't remember. Community, do your thing.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking like if she was the one who was like one parent was Nappin and the other wasn't, as a full-blooded Nappin, wouldn't you rather have somebody who's at least half on the throne versus somebody who's not? I guess I don't know.
I think Lucine did something, and I can't remember specifically what, to make the Nappins mad. Like they liked Kellenved or something like that, and so when she killed him, they got mad at her or something like that. Something along those lines. But I don't want to look it up because I'm sure I'll spoil something. So
yeah, I probably don't want to look that one up. Next thought here. Strings saying that they're going to send, the Empress is going to ship over the entire army over for this final battle. So I think he was talking to Gessler saying he can, complain to Whiskey Jack then when he gets here. So a couple of things on that. How do they know when the final battle is going to be? For one, what if they get just wrecked before that? And secondly, they don't know Whiskey Jack is dead yet. You're not going to be complaining to Whiskey Jack about it, but...
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Is that a slip on the author's perspective, or is that like a confidence thing?
I would have to think it's more of a confidence thing, but I can't help but think it. To me, it makes it feel like, okay, we've got a date set for this final battle almost.
Yeah. I didn't catch that. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know.
We'll see what happens, I guess.
It's building up to something.
It definitely is. And I'm surprised we haven't really run into a fight yet. So we'll see what happens with this first chapter in the next sub-book. I got to think we're going to get one pretty quick. Next thought here. What do I got? Oh, the adjunct wanting, some of these soldiers, they want to cut down the trees where the soldiers were hung from. But Tavor says no. And I can kind of see maybe why, and I guess it's pretty gruesome and horrible, but my thought would be is that maybe your soldiers use that as motivation your friends that were here, your comrades, they didn't get any mercy. So why should they expect any? You shouldn't. I feel like it's to be used as motivation to fight harder, to get revenge for your friends, your compatriots, right? And you might be fighting to the last guy, like literally to the man. It could happen.
But that's using hot iron as a tactic.
Or maybe I see that as just like that's cold blooded though. So
Maybe.
maybe it could be cold iron. I don't know.
Maybe.
I think because like that quote at the end about being cold iron to me is just like she's going to be just that cold, calculated. She's not going to be emotional. Is what I think.
Right. And revenge,
Yeah.
say, is emotional or unemotional?
Well, they say revenge is best served cold, right?
True.
But I think I feel like she making this decision was taking the emotion out of it. It might make her soldiers emotional having to see those trees, sure, but I think for her it wasn't.
Well, right. To react to the adornments, right, is to the enemy to see that it got under your skin.
Yes, that's a really good point. Yeah, good. I think that was a good collaboration there. I like that.
We don't often have them. Usually it's disagreements.
That's okay.
Yeah.
This line that Strings is, he's hearing these notes of a song that are just kind of, in the back of his mind or wherever. It's got to be the Thanos song, right?
I mean, yeah, he's the one who used the conch shell.
I'll be interested to see where that goes, what comes of that.
I'm sure it'll probably bring in elements of the Deadhouse Gates. I feel like we talked about this in the drunk episode. Maybe I'm not remembering correctly, but I feel like I had those points about the Tano.
Yeah, we did talk about it to some extent. I guess I don't remember at this point now either.
I was probably slurring so bad. You're like, yep, smile and nod, Justin.
I don't think you were that bad. I know you were struggling reading some of your comments and stuff. It was a good time.
Patrons, please don't judge me. Okay. Even though they'll see this before they read or hear this one, but yeah.
Yeah, retroactively don't judge Justin.
Yes. Please take away or take back all of the judgments you had. Thank you.
Hey, once out of 100 and some odd episodes, whatever, that's not too bad.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So yes, I agree with you. Tano song.
Awesome. This talk about thinking of the mirrored image, but not thinking of Shaik and Tavor, but Tavor and Coltane. They're walking a bloody path in reverse that Coltane took, and it was that ride that proved to all the others of Coltane's abilities. Would the same happen in their journey? I'm going to say no. I think this is kind of a hint in that. I think what we're going to see, like Coltane, he was very, I guess, adept in what he was doing, right? In the path that he walked. If they're walking that in reverse, I feel like you would. I'm going to expect to see pretty much the reverse of that. Totally. I think we'll see Tavor make some sort of blunder. Again, I think she'll learn from it, but I think it's going to cost her pretty dearly.
You think that all this is alluding up to her being cold, but you think in that moment she will forget herself and get emotional?
That she could do that, or she stays cold and just makes a bad call because she doesn't have any emotion in it. But I feel like this is just kind of in the way this is worded and what happened with Coltane that we might get the inverse of this. But also now I think about it.
You think it's going to start off bloody and then get better? Whereas with Coltane, it started off like really good, strategic, and then ended not to any fault of his own, but ended up walking into a trap essentially.
Right. Something like that. Yeah, I think it's just like the wording on this. To me, it's just, I feel like it's trying to be sneaky and like a certainly I'm not a detective, but to me, it just, I feel like, and this is a lot of like my feelings of what I'm expecting to happen. So, maybe it doesn't happen at all, but these are the clues that I'm picking up that are fitting, I guess, the narrative of what I'm expecting to read as we go.
Interesting. Well, playing off of this, though, right? So, like, if your theory is true, they do make a comparison that Tavor and Shaik's army are almost similar, that they're the same, right? Don't they say that they're mirrored as well?
Something, it was going to come down to numbers, right? Like it was going to be a numbers game. Who was going to win the fight?
Gotcha.
That's what I'm remembering, anyways.
So then that means that your theory is probably true, right?
Maybe.
Because the apocalypse, same thing. They got beat all the way down to the end where they won, right? So if you reverse that, they will they'll lose and then they'll start winning
Maybe.
as it goes on.
We'll see.
Yeah. So maybe it'll be Tavor wins the first battle and has this like weird, like overconfidence, and forgets her cold iron self and starts to get like emotional. And I don't know. That's interesting. But I also think that there is something, it seems a little suspect to me that we've got Felazan, Tavor heading off, and then we've got Ganoz as master of the deck. Like it almost kind of seems, right? Like think about this. It's like the rule of three, right? But we also have the Leosins. How the fuck do you say their goddamn name? The Tice Leosins.
I think that sounds right.
And then the Tice Yedur. And we've also got the Tice Andi, right? That is another group of three that are all related.
Yes.
So is it potential that the Paran Tavor Felazan story is almost mirroring what happened with the Teast races?
I don't know if I feel like that's a stretch right now or not. Maybe there could be something there. I don't know.
But
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if they are saying that like they mirror each other, Tavor is Coltane's shadow, right? So if Tavor is Coltane's shadow, but the Shaik and Tavor's army are mirrored, then that also means that Felazan is the shadow. You know what I mean? So it's just this weird thing. Yeah.
I'm really excited to continue to read here.
Yeah. It's been a long 2.5 weeks. And this was the
Yes.
shortest chapter, so.
Yeah. I think you got a comment here, Justin?
Oh, do I?
Yeah.
Ooh. When Gessler and Stormy are talking about, Gessler punching Coltane, and Stormy was saying that it rivaled a punch from Urko, right? We also know Urko is in a pan that went missing, right?
Yep.
So is it possible that Urko is Keeper because he punched a Tevlor unconscious?
I guess, yeah, that makes sense. I guess that I was thinking Keeper was the other one. I can't remember his name right now.
I can't remember it either.
I guess you're probably right. I wanted it to be the other one.
I don't even remember who the other one, his brother, right?
Yeah, I can't remember his name either.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. We'll as soon as we see or hear the name again, we'll be like, yeah, that guy.
Yeah, that's true. This thought here, let's see. They all knew what that probably meant. They're assuming Kenna being better than Ronal. Rumor has it he was the only one to survive out of that unit. And they all knew what that probably meant. Oh, yeah. They're all assuming that he was highborn and that he fled, but that wasn't obviously the case.
Right. Yeah, because we read all about that in Deadhouse Gates.
Yeah, he's the one who shot the arrow at Coltane, right?
Keneb?
Oh fuck, no, that wasn't Keneb. Keneb's the one with the kid.
Yeah.
Kid they picked up. Yeah.
Yep. And who traveled with Kalam and Manala.
Yeah.
Through the Imperial Warren. Yeah.
Right. Those are all the thoughts I've got for that section.
Oh, nice. Nice. Well, I'm ready to move on if you are.
Yeah, unless there's anything else you want to add.
Not that I can think of. It's a chapter that's tensing up, Everything is being wound, and there's some hidden gems in there Some which you realize, some which you probably don't.
Right. But I'm ready here for you.
All right. The first day of travel was done. To Gamut, it didn't even seem like they traveled very far from Aren. Similar to the army, though, he was a long way from finding his feet. Saddle sore and tight-headed from the heat, the Fist watched as the camp slowly took shape. Seti and Wiccan horse riders ranged well beyond the picket lines. He observed that the Wiccans had some elder riding within their clan. He thought to himself that he may have crossed blades with them at some point in the past. Those older ones never liked the idea of being part of an empire. They were here for a different reason, and that reason was Coltane. Gamut stretched and then headed towards Tavor's command tent. He saw a few Wiccans guarding the tent. He didn't see Tamol, though. Gamut felt bad for the lad, fighting different skirmishes already, and without even having to raise his sword, and losing, too. Worse yet, there wasn't anything anyone could do about it. He approached the tent, making his presence known. Tavor told him to come in. She was kneeling in front of a box with her Otatero sword inside. She instructs Gamut to grab the softened wax from a pot and bring it to her. Tavor then used the wax to seal the Otatero sword inside the box. She got up, complaining about being over the sand. She stared at Gamut for a second before telling Gamut to help himself to watered-down wine if he so pleased. As they were waiting for some news. Gamut wondered at this and saw the brief concern on her face. She urgently told him to join her at her side. He joined her and then faced the center of the tent. A portal appeared and a tall green-clad figure stepped out. Topper greets Tavor on behalf of the Empress. Tavor tells Topper that his mission here will be an unpleasant one and instructs Gamut to pour Topper some wine. Gamut gave Topper his wine, but inside his head, he recognized that this was the damn Master of the Claw. Topper took the wine, and Gamut went to stand where the jug of wine had awaited. Tavor asked if he had come directly from the Empress. Topper said that this was correct. Before he had come from Genebacchus, where he had spent a glum evening with High Mage Tastren. He asked out loud if it would be a shock to know that the pair of them got drunk that night. Gamut was surprised at the unlikely image in his mind. The adjunct briefly startled. Before regaining her composure, she asked what news she had brought them. Topper swallowed the water wine down and explained that the news was about losses on Genebacchus. Terrible losses. All right, it's kind of a shorter section. Obviously we are getting this chopped up into chunks here. My first thought was just this thought of him recollecting himself battling Wiccans. And I would imagine that this was before the Wiccans became part of the Empire or were conquered. We don't really have that history as of yet. So it kind of seems that he's reminiscing a little bit, kind of being all like, oh, well, this is weird. Some elders riding out there. I probably have fought some of them.
Yeah. Now you're on the same side.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So that must be a little strange for him. Maybe depending upon his experiences in those battles, he's probably thankful that they are on his side and not against him.
Right.
My second thought here, Topper saying that she was correct. Before she had come directly from the Empress, he had come from Genebacchus, where he had spent an evening with High Mage Tastren getting drunk. And my guess is that he was there getting the report on the Panion Domain.
I think that makes sense. And I mean, yeah.
What's also weird, though, is Gamut's reaction to him telling them that they got drunk together. So I get the feeling that they don't really see eye to eye because Gamut had a hard time picturing that. So I wonder if, publicly, they don't really get along.
I guess I didn't pick up on that, so that's an interesting find.
I don't know if I really have anything to disprove that anywhere else. I don't think we've really ever gotten a description of the two of them together, so...
I don't think so. Not anything that I can recall.
Yeah, and of course, we all know what the terrible losses are. We just got done reading that book.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny because like this chapter almost seems like it's grief a little bit, some like grief that's never been really dealt with yet,
I can see that.
with the icons and the fetishes and, we get kind of brought back to the end of Memories of Ice at what I would call the second half of this chapter.
Yeah, you've got the end of Memories of Ice and the end of Deadhouse Gates, both which were pretty tough endings, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I don't have any other thoughts. Like I said, it was real quick, just kind of informing us that Topper is here. He's got some news. We have an idea on what that news is. Blah blah blah.
All right. Well, I got a shorty of a section here, so. Laying in the grass behind the squad, Bottle could hear his name being called while his eyes were closed. It was Strings calling him, but he had heard Gessler call him Fid. But he wasn't ready yet, and there were other conversations he needed to listen to and not be detected, which was no easy task. His grandmother back on Malaz City would be proud. Forget about the Warrens. Use the old magic and seek out the roots and tendrils. The paths woven through the ground. Every creature on the land or in the air, in the water, they're all linked. And if you had been awakened, then you could ride them, which is what Bottle did. He still used the Mianus Warren and illusions on these tendrils, tying them in knots that tricked the eye and touch and all of the other senses. This was a game worth playing. For the time being, he had immersed himself in the old ways, which were undetectable as long as he was careful anyways. Bottle rode the tendrils of cape moths and other small insects that danced on the tent walls, listening but not comprehending. Comprehending was Bottle's job, and so he listened as the newcomer talked, who was neither interrupted by the adjunct or gamut. I've only got one thought on this, and it's just, it seems like Bottle might be a little bit more than a simple squad mage. I think, he's more, maybe a little bit more powerful anyways than he's letting on.
I would say so. Yeah. It's almost like he took what was his grandmother?
Yeah.
Yeah. He took his grandmother's advice to heart and has been using his powers to like really play with Minas.
Yeah, I don't remember. Maybe it's a point in one of my later sections, but we can talk about it now here too. I'll bring it up, but I don't really know. Like, it makes me wonder what he's up to. Like, why did he think to do this? I know, like, maybe it's in your next section. He says he feels the portal open up, but why did that make him want to essentially spy on Tavor to find out what's going on? Like, if he got caught, do you think she would take very kindly to that? Like, do you think she would be impressed that he was doing this, or do you think she'd be mad?
I feel like she would probably be pretty pissed.
I think so too. So I'd like, I don't know he must be up to something.
I know that you had told me to chill out with the comments here over text message because I was wondering if this is maybe how he got his name, because it's almost like he's bottling up his skills.
Maybe.
All right. Anyway, moving on.
Oh, I guess I do have one.
Oh.
Oh, well, we kind of talked about it, so never mind.
Yeah.
We're good. We're good.
I mean, you got the sense that he was using the Cape Moths to listen, right? Like he was able to like manipulate them into okay.
Yeah.
All right. Section 5 here. Strings couldn't believe that either two mages could sense Bottle's whereabouts. Strings strode back to Gessler and Borduke. As Strings sat down, Gessler proposed that the lad had deserted, and if he did, the Wiccans would catch up with the lad. Before he could finish, someone barked that Bottle had just gotten back into camp. Strings turned to see the mage sit down at the fire across the road from them. He got up and approached Bottle and demanded to know where he had been. Bottle looked up and asked if no one else had felt it. Looking over at Balgrid and Tavis Pond, he asked them if they had sensed the portal that opened up in the adjunct's tent. They both stared at him as if he had two heads. Discouraged, he asked the pair if they had mastered hiding pebbles and making coins disappear. Strings crouched down and asked what was with the portal he had mentioned. Bottle explains that what he had heard about the tragedy with Dujak's army on Genebakis. After he heard about Whiskey Jack's death, his mind went numb, and anger flooded through him. He felt Gessler's hand on his shoulder, but shrugged that off and stormed off into the darkness behind the camp. He did not know how long or how far he walked. He was oblivious to the world around him, till finally a sudden weakness in his legs allowed him to walk no further, and he sank down into the grasses. He heard weeping from somewhere ahead. He listened to the cries and winced to hear how they seemed torn from a constricted throat, like a dam finally sundered by the flood of grief. Strings collected himself and became aware of surroundings. He drew a deep breath and then rose, headed towards the sound of weeping. He came across a lad he recognized but didn't know his name. He knew that Tavor had placed him in command of the Wiccans. After a long moment, he moved forward, sat down on a boulder a few paces from the lad. His head snapped up to see who had joined him. He hissed and made to grab his knife. String told him to relax, as he was in grief as well. The Wiccan hesitated and put his weapon away. He got up to walk away. String said that it was unnecessary to flee, and that he should give the sergeant his words of sorrow. The Wiccan asked who Strings was. Fiddler said that he was nobody and just here to listen. Tamal's voice was harsh and asked Strings if he had thought that Tamal grieved for Coltane or his kin. Tamal admits that he did not. He wept for himself, and he was done commanding. String tells the Wiccan that he understands. The survivors from Gessler's ship don't want Tamal as their leader, so, like children, they make it difficult at every turn. So where does that leave Tamal? Well, he couldn't challenge them all. Tamal said that maybe he could. Fiddler said that this would please the Wiccans to no end, and Tamal would die. Tamal said that this was something he already knew and prepared for. Fiddler explains that he had a commander once that was in the same situation. Tamal asked what he had done. Fiddler explained that it wasn't much, but he ended up with a knife in his back. There was a moment of silence until Tamal laughed. Fiddler admits that he's not good at stories with lessons, and his mind focuses more on practical choices. Tamal asked about what. Fiddler states that he thinks the adjunct feels just as frustrated as Tamal did. The adjunct wanted Tamal to lead, but didn't want to lose face if she were to help. Fiddler asked where the Wiccan horses were. Tamal wanted to know why he was asking. Fiddler admits that he thinks the Seti Outriders could do a day without the Wiccans. He's positive the adjunct would agree. The Seti are untested and need room to find themselves. There's good military reason to keep the Wiccans from their horses. Let them walk with the rest of us. Tamal said that they would need to be quiet in getting to the Wiccans' horses. Fiddler said that this was another task for the Seti. Fiddler said that if his kin were to keep being children, then they could go without their favorite playthings. In any case, Tamal should get going to see the adjunct. Before he leaves, Fiddler asks Tamal why he had a scroll hanging from his horse's saddle. Tamal admits that it was once Duiker's horse, and the scroll was also his. He states that he wears the feather in his hat because he has to, because Coltane did what was expected of him. Duiker was different. He was there when Bolt, Coltane, Lull, Chened, Mincer all spoke of Duiker's task to lead the refugees to Aren. Coltane even gave Duiker the stone that the traders had given him. Fiddler asked about the stone. Tamal said that Nil had called the stone a saving stone. Duiker did not like that he wore it, knowing it was for Coltane. We Wiccans knew that his soul would not be lost, and the crows would come for it. He reveals that the elder of his clan tells Tamal of a child born, once empty but now full, because the crows came. Fiddler asked if Coltane was reborn. Tamal said that Coltane has been reborn. Fiddler guessed that Duiker's body was missing from the tree he put it up in. Tamal said that this was true, and so he keeps the horse for the historian. Fiddler and Duiker look to Tamal to guard the refugees, not just Nil and Nether. Tumul's eyes hardened and he nodded. He said he would go visit the adjunct now. Fid said that the lady pulled on the commander now. Tumul said that this night Fiddler had saw. Fiddler said that he saw nothing. Tumul got on his horse and rode off. Fiddler sat there a moment and then slowly lowered his head into his hands. Powerful scene.
Yeah.
I first thought here, Bottle kind of explaining everything that we learned at the end of Memories of Ice. And the reason I assumed it was anger was because it was described as a wildfire ripped through Fiddler's inner landscape, scorching the ground barren. It was just a very powerful way to accentuate how Fiddler is feeling at the news of Whiskey Jack's death. Like, he's fucking livid. He's pissed. And how much do you think he blames himself? He had an opportunity to go back.
Alcohol, right?
He chose to go back to the Seven Cities.
We all make choices.
Yeah. And, for Fiddler, this is the first he's heard. But for us, it's an echo that brings sadness.
Yeah, it's just like it just kind of brings it back again when you're like, you kind of like, maybe you don't think about it as much, right? And then you're like, oh fuck, like that happened and that was brutal. And
but yeah, you go back to Corlott, you go back to that scene where Moonspawn is just floating above her and like it's raining down over. Yeah. You go to the knee, right? And all of the foreshadowing over the books about his fucking knee. You go to Calor and his fucking ass and his betrayal. It's just there's so much that accompanies Whiskey Jack's death.
Yeah.
I liked the saying where, Fiddler also hears someone else kind of wailing, and Fiddler describes the sound like a dam finally sundered by the flood of grief. The way that this was worded makes me think about the Nascent and its flooding. And you think that that's maybe a hint? Maybe the Tissidor world was flooded because of grief?
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, it reminded me of the prologue. So I'm like, is that maybe a hint as to maybe the intent or the motivation as to why it was flooded?
I definitely did not make that type of a connection.
Yeah. I definitely think that it wasn't for grief. I think that it was a power play to lose the Amass.
Gotcha.
But never know.
Right.
Maybe they grieved about it.
They could have.
This part where Fiddler is telling the stories of all bridge burner captains, right? Where they all end up with knives in their back. And I loved his attempt at empathy here. I don't necessarily think that this made Tumul feel any better about his current situation, though.
I don't think so.
I found it humorous.
Yeah, I don't think he was feeling better about it.
No. Which is why he, after some moment of silence, just laughed.
But at least he tried, right? I mean,
yeah. And then also later on when they're talking about Duiker and kind of his expectations, and Tumul just kind of goes back to like, hey, I was there when Coltane, Lull, Chened, Menser, Bolt, and just a stab in the heart with the recollection of these names. Like, I'd totally forgotten about Lull and Chened and even Mincer, who was the sapper, the captain sapper that had eluded us for all of Deadhouse Gates because he forgot to write it in.
I didn't remember that name. Yeah, that elusive captain.
Yeah,
I didn't think he existed.
Yeah, it's just again kind of the echoes of sadness that I mentioned with Whiskey Jack's death. These also kind of come back, and you get brought back to the end of Deadhouse Gates and that chapter.
Yeah.
And then again, kind of when Tumul reveals the crows coming, just again, epilogue to Deadhouse Gates is what that is alluding to with the crows and the baby being reborn or whatever. Fiddler asked if Coltane had been reborn, and kind of what I had alluded to earlier in the episode is, I get the feeling that this isn't what it seems. It would be weird to think of Coltane coming back, which is kind of a staple for these books, but I mean, I feel like it does him more power to stay dead.
Just have to see what happens. I don't know if he will or not.
I am curious to see if we do get some chapters where, again, they're doing the reverse order of the chain of dogs. So, like, do they find some artifacts from the chain of dogs that, like, recollect a different story, or you know what I mean? Like that would be cool.
Right.
But yeah, that's all I had for that very sorrow-filled section.
Well, I don't think this one necessarily gets a lot better in that regard, so
Fair enough.
I don't remember if I've got one more section or if this is my last one.
This is your last.
This is my last one? All right. I'll give it my all. The three sat now that Topper was done talking. Silence seemed the only appropriate thing at that moment. Gamut looked in his cup. It was empty. He reached for the jug and found that empty as well. Tired as he was, Gamut knew he wouldn't leave yet. Tavor had been told how brave her brother was, then his death. Gamut thought on that fact that there were no bridge burners left. Taishren had seen their bodies placed within Moonspawn, but Ganoz had redeemed the family name. At least he had done that. Tavor had made sacrifices in the name of the family's honor as well. Ganoz was no renegade. He wasn't responsible for Lorne's death, and like Dujek and Whiskey Jack, his outlawry was just deception. There had been no dishonor, so the sacrifice of Felison, in the end, may have been unnecessary. Yet there was more. The Empress had hoped to land Dujek's army on the northern shore in time to deliver a double blow to the army of the Apocalypse. The idea being for Dujek to assume overall command. This made sense to Gamut as placing the fate in the hands of an untested adjunct was a big reach. Dujek was still coming to 7 cities, but with only about 3,000 soldiers. He would be late, and from what Topper and Taishren could see, his spirit was destroyed by the loss of his best friend. Gamut wondered what else had happened with this Panny and Doman. Gamut had thought Topper had said too much. Lysine's plans should have been brought by one who was more emotionally stable, and if the truth was so important, it should have been laid out before the adjunct long before now, when it would have mattered. Instead, she was essentially told the Empress has no faith in her, yet she is the last hope on 7 cities for the Empire. There were few men or women who would be able to handle that kind of news. Tavor cleared her throat and asked Topper if there was anything else left to say. He said no, and asked if she had a message she wanted delivered to the Empress. Tavor said no. They had begun their march into the Holy Desert. There's nothing else to tell. Topper hesitated, then said there actually was one more thing. She probably had soldiers who followed Fenner in her army. He didn't think the truth of the God's fall could be hidden. The Tiger of Summer is the Lord of War now. It may be difficult to adjust, and they may need to prepare for some desertions. Tavor said there would be no desertions. The portal was weakening. Even a box of basalt cannot completely counter the effects of her sword. If he wants to leave tonight, she suggested he do so now. Topper said they were hurting and down. The Empress hopes Tavor exercises caution. Do not get too distracted. Do not make any hasty decisions on the march to Raraku. There will be attempts to draw her from the path, wear her down with skirmishes and pursuits. Don't fall for them. Tavor said he was a clawmaster. She would listen to Dujek's advice once he arrived. He is a soldier, a commander, and until he gets here, she would follow her own instincts. If the Empress isn't happy with that, then the Empress can replace her with someone else. Topper walked into the Imperial Warren and disappeared. Gamut told Tavor she had his sorrows for her loss. She thanked him and told him to get some sleep. On his way out, Gamut finished her sentence saying he would get to Amber. Tavor smirked, asking if he disapproved. He said yes, as he wasn't the only one who needed sleep. Heck, they hadn't even eaten tonight. He told the adjunct good night. What do we got here?
I think you got plenty.
Yeah, they're talking about Ganoz redeeming the family name.
This was fucked up, wasn't it?
What?
Keep going. I think that if I'm thinking where I'm thinking you're taking this, it's fucked up. Yeah.
Well, maybe you need to fill me in or rattle my brain a little bit. I guess I don't remember what specific event they're talking about that redeemed his family name.
Oh, I gotcha. They're talking about Tavor and her sacrificing Felozin to clear up the family name, to go into the employ of the Empire and become the adjunct to clear the Aren family name. Give up her fellow nobles.
Well, it says Gnos had redeemed the family name, though.
Oh, right, because he died. He died in battle.
So, like when Sari stabbed him.
No. Before.
Gotcha. Like he's on the list of the dead.
Yes.
Gotcha. Yes. Okay, gotcha. I was confused by that. So I guess that kind of feeds onto my next comment then, or it clears that up. Oh, well, I guess I had two comments on that. That same one was like 1A, 1B. So just like the specific deed. And then I was thinking if they were talking about when he got stabbed by Sari.
Gotcha.
But
that's why you said something.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, speaking of Felozin, like, you know, her sacrifice might not have been needed. Could you imagine how pissed she would be? Like if she found out?
Yeah, dude. But also, can you imagine, like, even going further back? Is this possibly to say that this could have prevented the Shaikh Reborn being Felozin? Like, can you imagine? Think back to like the chapter in Deadhouse Gates where we're left with a cliffhanger as to who the young girl and the old man are strolling into, you know, old Shaikh's body, right? Imagine if Felozin and Haborik never showed up. And from what I recall, Karza and Leoman were damn near death as they hadn't eaten anything. So that also could have been the end of Karza if it wasn't Felozin.
That's a pretty wild ripple effect, isn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. I didn't even think about like that side of things. I was just thinking like, I went through all this shit and I didn't have to. Like, fuck you guys.
But just to think, like, I mean, eventually, what's done in darkness eventually comes to light, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that Felzoin's gonna find out eventually. But also, that's really fucked up on the Empress's side of things. Like, she knew what Tavor was doing, what she was sacrificing, and she just let her do it. Like, how diabolical is that?
A little bit.
Yeah. Like, oh, you sent your younger sister to the mines to protect her?
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Gamut's wondering what else happened with this Panny and Doman that he heard about. And to me, like, doesn't it just sound like a shit sandwich? Like, you can fight the Panny and Doman, or you can fight the Army of the Apocalypse. Like, pick your poison, right? Neither one's a good option here.
Right.
And I guess, like, to equate it into our real world, to me, it's almost like, well, would you rather have fought in Europe in World War II or in the Pacific? I guess if I had to pick one, I'd probably rather fight in Europe, but that would have sucked too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it would have.
Was that everything I had? Do I got one more? I've got one more. It looks like this as it kind of ties into my other section a little bit, I think. But Topper's giving this advice to Tavor, you know, don't fall for these distractions, these little skirmishes and that type of thing. And she's like, well, what do you really know? You're just a clawmaster. I will listen to Dujek once he gets here, but until then, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to follow my own instincts. Well, I hope she's got good instincts, because otherwise that could go really bad. And to me, it just ties into that last section where they're talking about the mirror images, right? Or things like being in reverse. Is this is the blunder here? You know, she's going to get stretched too thin doing all these little fights that she doesn't really need to do. I don't know. Just a thought.
I would agree. And that's kind of, from what I understand, that was the tactic that they were doing in Deadhouse Gates with Coltane. And Coltane just ignored it, right? Like,
they kept going. Yeah.
I mean, if anything, that's maybe a clue as to how she'll do it.
Maybe. But that's all I got there. So unless anything else you want to add?
I don't have any other comments outside of I think the big takeaway from that section was just the whole Felozin doesn't know. Felozin doesn't know that Fiona and me do it in my way every Sunday.
I don't know what song you're singing.
Euro Trip.
All I can think of is Stacy's mom has got it going on.
No,
Or Scott,
no.
'cause Scotty doesn't know.
Yeah, Scotty doesn't know that Fiona and me.
Oh,
I
I
just,
guess I didn't know the rest of the lyrics. That's
yeah, yeah.
all. Okay,
It's like one of my favorite movies of all time. So,
got you. Sorry
yeah.
to burst your bubble there.
Nah, it's okay. It's all right.
Well, take it home, ma'am. Bring us home.
Let's take it home. All right. When Strings returned, there was only Cuddle still sitting by the fire. Strings asked why Cuddle was awake. Cuddle replied that he had done his sleep, and come tomorrow, it'll be the sergeant, or Fiddler, who will be dragging his feet. Fiddler admits that he doesn't think sleep will happen for him. Cuddle said that the sergeant worries were all far away. Fiddler said that it felt so much closer. Cuddles said that at least he wasn't walking in the footprints of his fallen companions. Fiddler was unsure of what he had meant by that, but thanked Cuddle for the words. Cuddle thanks Fid for the munitions. Strings grunted and said that it was the strangest thing. We keep finding more. They're meant to be used, but we always hoard them. He tells Cuddle to tell no one, as they'll make them use them, the bastards. Cuddle said that he'll use the ones Fid gave him when he can crawl underneath Dom's feet. He doesn't mind going to Hood at the same time. Fiddler commented that he suspects that it was Hedge, that this is what Hedge did in his last moments. Fiddler said he just wished he would have been there, and lists off the men that had died. Cuddle heard Quick's name and told Fiddler that he doubts that Quick Ben is dead, as there was more that was said after Fiddler had left. Fid wonders about Ganoes. Cuddle informs the sapper that he has died as well. Fiddler wonders if the adjunct knew, and if she grieved. Cuddle said that wondering was a waste of time. They have soldiers here and now that need taking care of. Dom's warriors know how to fight, and the way Cuddle sees it, they will not fare well against Dom. This time, though, as we walk back to Aren, we won't even get close before we're all slaughtered. Fiddler said that this was a cheery prediction. Cuddle said it didn't matter, as long as he could get close to Dom and his mage. Fiddler asked, well, what if you don't? Cuddle said he'd take as many of them as he could, because he ain't walking back, not again. Fid said he would remember that if the moment arose. He then asked what about the soldiers they had to care for. Cuddle said that this was what the march was for. They would deliver them to this battle and see what type of iron they were holding. Fiddler said that he hadn't heard that in a long time, and since they're looking for revenge, they'd probably want the iron hot. Cuddle said that Fid expected it wrong. Look at Tavor. There won't be any heat from her, in that she's just like Coltane. He tells Fid that it's obvious. The iron has to be cold. If they get it cold enough, maybe they would earn themselves a name. Fiddler reached over and tapped Cuddle's finger bone necklace and said that they've made a pretty good start. Cuddle said that this is true. That and the standards out there, she knows what's in her. Give her that. Fiddler asked if it was up to them to bring it out. Cuddle agreed and told him to go away, as he'd like to be alone. Fiddler nodded, got to his feet, and then said that maybe he would be able to get some sleep. Cuddle said that it was because of his conversation with him that had done it. As Fid walked to his tent, something of Cuddle's words struck him. Tavor needed to find the cold iron within her, but so must he as well. Whoa! So I guess my first thought here before we kind of get to the cold iron conversation, just this whole thought of like, Cuddle's like, well, come tomorrow, it'll be you, Fiddler, that is dragging your feet. And it's because Cuddle's done this before. And I would be absolutely traumatized, purely based on the first experience of walking through the desert. I don't know how the man is able to sleep. I feel like Cuddle should be Fiddler.
I mean, he went through a lot of it, but it all, like the whole thing was pretty terrible, right? But he kind of bypassed maybe some of the worst parts of it at the end, right? When he got on the ship.
Yeah, but later on he says, because he ain't walking back, not again. And I had that same thought. I'm like, wait a minute. Didn't he leave on the ship? So he never made that walk to begin with.
Well, I mean, he walked enough of it. Maybe that's just kind of what it's saying is he's not going to do any of it. I don't know.
That's what I'm assuming. I'm assuming it was into relation to something else and not necessarily the walk to Aren from like that last stand, so to speak.
Yeah, I don't think like any of those guys would be like, well, you missed this part, so you didn't actually walk the chain of dogs. Like I did the whole thing and saw it all, so like we walked it, but you didn't. You know, I don't
Yeah.
get that sense or anything.
And then this whole part where he's like, you know what? I just want to crawl underneath Dom's feet because I don't mind going to Hood at the same time as him. Like, oh my God, man. That's brutal. It's so
Blow
brutal.
myself up.
It makes me think of like suicide bombers. You know, like
Yeah.
I don't know if I really care for Cuddle's sense of mind right now.
Well, he obviously really hates Corbolo Dom and is willing to kill himself to make sure he kills Corbolo.
Yes, because Corbolo is a betrayer, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, it makes total sense. All right, next thought. I love this line, wondering is a waste of time. And I just kind of get the sense that it's similar to a phrase like, you know, you shouldn't worry so much because it gives you something to do, but doesn't really take you anywhere. You know, like that's kind of the vein, the vibe that I got from wondering was a waste of time in response to Fiddler wondering if Tavor is grieving the loss of her brother.
If she is, she's not showing it very outwardly.
Right. Cold iron.
Yeah.
And then this whole kind of playing into your theory about them getting their ass kicked. They say, he actually says that they'll get whipped and run back with their tails between their legs like a dog. And Dom's army is known as the Dog Slayers, right?
Yes.
Yes. So just,
Yes.
yeah, commonality I picked out.
Sure. Relative terms, I suppose. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of just a comparison, right?
Yeah.
We already talked about the walking back, not again. All right, so here we go. The iron has to be cold. I love this. And they make the comparison to Coltane being cold. And at first, like when I first read this chapter, I didn't really understand. But Coltane being mentioned was kind of my clue to figuring it out, as his tactical style was calculated, right? Cold and calculated.
Yes.
And then hot iron, I equate to emotional. They're out to look for revenge. So you could almost say that the army in Aren was hot when Tavor arrived and has since been cooling down under her leadership, even though everyone has some questions about it. And I thought that this was kind of fascinating to me. And they're right. She just needs to continue to be cold, because that is how Coltane managed to fight Dom's army and make it as far as they did.
I think she's going to be cold, but I don't think she needs to be hot. Like I've been thinking about this, like, as we've been talking, and like, what's the other saying? Strike when the iron is hot, right?
Uh-huh.
And I don't think she's going to be doing that. It's going to be cold, but I still got that gut feeling that something is going to go awry. Something is not going to go right. She's going to make some sort of a mistake, or maybe she already has, like, you know, kind of suggested in, you know, maybe not listening to Topper. Maybe that is, I don't know, but I just, cold or not, something's not going to go right. It's not going to be pretty.
You're probably right. It's the hopeful in me that everything gets figured out, you know?
Well, like I said, I think it will eventually, but I think she's going to lose someone. And I'm wondering, like, is she going to do something that gets to Amber killed or something, or Gamut, someone close to her?
Think so?
Maybe that will really, like, lock her down on that, like, double down on the coldness and be like, okay, well, I fucked up, right? Like, I got this person killed that I really cared about, and this was my fault, and now maybe that's where she's going to want to get some revenge or something. I don't know.
Mm.
But I feel like, you know, I kind of thought before that, well, she's going to get a bunch of her soldiers killed, and she's obviously going to lose some, but maybe that's not what's going to happen. Maybe she's not going to lose a big chunk of her army. Maybe she's going to make some sort of mistake that gets someone close to her killed.
I mean, I can see it, and then she'll probably strike with hot iron,
Maybe.
and then even make it more worse for the going. Yeah, I don't know.
But now we can read and find out.
Now we can continue to read, and we may not even find out.
Right. Not right away, but we're one step closer to finding out.
Yeah.
I will probably read this tonight.
Oh, I will be too.
I don't even know how long of a chapter we've got. Something breathes. What do you suppose that is? Ooh. What if it's my dragon under Drift of Ollie idea?
It could be, man. It very well could be, good sir.
That would be fun.
It would be. I still don't know why you think it would be a dragon.
I don't know. I just pulled it out of my ass.
You just pulled it out of your ass.
Yeah.
Well,
we've got a decently long chapter here.
yeah, I think it's like a little over 60 pages.
Oh shit, you've already looked?
Yeah, I was looking while you were reading.
60 pages? Well, damn. Well, we'll knock out a good chunk of the book. A bunch of sections?
I don't know.
Okay,
That part I didn't look at.
So 515 to 571.
Jesus.
I'm no math. I'm not doing that math in my head right now. Well, what? 71 minus 10, 61, another 56 pages? Something like that. Decently long.
That.
Nothing like jumping right back in, huh?
This is what we do to ourselves.
But we love it.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Any predictions? Who do you think we're gonna see here? Think we're gonna get a little bit of everybody?
Let's see.
Or who, according to your schedule as the chapters went, who should we be coming up on?
So we just talked with, so now we're back. So now it should go to Kalam, Cutter. So yeah, I would imagine then, maybe 30 pages of it is Kalam's journey into Raraku. The other 30 pages are Cutter on Drift of Ollie.
I don't know what part interests me most right now, because that is interesting, but I also want to just see a freaking battle already.
You're ready to get it on.
I am.
Get it on.
I'll allow it. Well, my kid's going to be going here pretty quick, so I'll have to Minnesota goodbye it here for you. Not Minnesota goodbye it.
All right, man. No worries. Well,
like I said, probably going to read this tonight, or at least some of it. So if I get started, or if you get started, let me know what you think. We'll see who starts it first, I guess, for fun.
Sounds great, man.
Awesome. Well, it was good to get back in the saddle here with you. I'm glad we did it. So
yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
It is nice to be back.
It's good seeing you, man.
Good to see you.
All right. Take it easy, bud.
Bye.
Bye.
DMJ's Epic Quest. DMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest. CMJ's Epic Quest.